So thanks everybody for attending. Those of you that are online or with us in person. So we have our last of the most recent promotions. So this is Dr. Calvin Odero. Calvin is a weed scientist from the Belglade EREC down in South Florida. Calvin has worked for a very long time with IFAS at this point, and he has primarily worked in the area of sugarcane and vegetable weed control. So if anybody that has worked in crop production but has not worked in South Florida, you realize that everything you know about crop production rarely translates to South Florida. It is a different planet in just about every respect, from their soils to their pests to their growing season and their production practices. So fortunately, Calvin has been there. He has learned these things and become a local expert, as well as someone that's highly relied upon for his expertise. So having just made the leap to full professor, I wanted to invite him today to talk about his program, talk about the things he's done, the successes he's had, and particularly for being our most recent addition to the full professor rank. So Calvin, thank you for being with us.
All right. Thank you, Jay, and thank you everyone for coming to listen to my talk on, I put a title there, hopefully it'll make sense, navigating the path to professorship. Challenges, opportunities, growth and success that are out. Here are the slides. So I'll talk about some background information about myself, the programs, and all the way to how things worked for me within the department to get promoted to the level of being a full professor. So as I mentioned, I'm originally I was born in Kenya, born in a town called Homa Bay, which is on the shores of a Lake Victoria. It's the largest freshwater lake in Africa. So it's in Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. But most of the larger portions are in Uganda. Tanzania. Kenya only has a narrow strip of it. And then I went to school, a university that is called Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology. So it's kind of in the central part of the country, closer to the capital city, which is Nairobi. And my bachelor's degree was in horticulture. So I graduated in 1997 with the British system, they say BSc, with a Bachelor of Science in horticulture, and did a little bit of kind of worked some of the private industry, and then from there came to the US in 2003, and then went to, anyone guess which state that is? With nice snow, cattle, cowboys. Wyoming, yeah. So I went to the University of Wyoming in 2003 for a master's degree in agronomy, and I specialized in wheat science. So Wyoming only has one university, which is the University of Wyoming. It's in Laramie. So I did my master's work there and my PhD work too in Wyoming. And all the work that I did was in the crop at the extreme end, that's sugar beet. So I've kind of been stuck with sugar since my graduate career now as a faculty member. And then when I graduated in 2008, I was a postdoc there for, I would say, slightly 1 year, maybe a couple of months before I came to join the University of Florida. So I was hired, remember my start date was July 10, 2010. And I was hired by the agronomy department and was based at the Everglades Research and Education Center. So this is just a picture of the center, kind of showing this is the main administration building. We have a lab building here with faculty, offices, and so forth. And then a conference center, and then the rest of behind that is our research farm where we have we have production units. We also have research works and all that. So the Everglades REC is one of the research centers that are located across the state. So Belglade is right south of the tip of Lake Okeechobee. It's one of the, let's say, 4 RECs that are in the southern part of the state. So there is the number 10 would be Markley, number 4 would be Fort Lauderdale, and then I'm 11, that's home state. So I've been based there for almost the last 15 years since 2010. And I started as an assistant professor from 2010 to 2016, and my appointments were 35% research appointment, and most of my appointment has always been extension, which was 65%. And the journey that I went through from, when I was hired, the people who were very instrumental that I would say, I was hired, the center director then was Rob Gilbert. But yeah, when I was hired, Rob Gilbert was the site committee chair. And then he became center director like for maybe a month or two after I was hired. And then he moved to Gainesville and still became my boss as the department chair. And then Greg Desley took over as the center director. So when I went up for my first promotion, Rob was the department chair with Greg Desley as the center director. And I'm very grateful to the mentoring committee that I had that were very instrumental in helping me navigate that path from assistant to associate professor. Dr. Jay Farrell was the chair of my mentoring committee. Dr. Brent Sellers and Dr. Ron Sherry, who was based at the Everglades REC, he is retired an entomologist. And then, so I was an associate professor, when I got promoted. So I didn't, so took me a while before, submitting my paperwork to be a full professor, but my appointment remained the same. It was 35% research and 65% extension. And then in 2011, I added more kind of responsibilities to my position. I became the associate center director at the ERC in Belgrade until today. So my appointment changed slightly. My research appointment reduced to 30%, extension 65, and I only have a 5% administrative appointment. So it's not that much. I typically fill in for the center director. She's not there. And for my promotion from associate to full professor, at that point, Dr. Gopal was the department chair, so he did help me with, going through that. And then, of course, as current center director, was there to help with the process. So I'm very grateful to them. So as I mentioned, then in 2024, I got the promotion until last year. My appointment remained the same, still 30% research, 65% extension with a 5% service appointment. And I'm still very grateful to my chair and center director that I've still been there to be, still help and guide me, even though now I'm at that full professor level, but you still have to go back and fall back to your unit leaders to help with a certain number of things to help you to be successful. So grateful to Jay and Samira for that. So I want to get into the area where I work in Belgrade. I know a lot of people never been there, the people who don't know where the area is. So there is what is called the Everglades agricultural area. So it's the major area where most of the sugarcane crop is grown in Florida. It's an area of about 700,000 acres of land, but most of the land is mostly used for sugarcane cultivation. So in Florida, there are three major entities that produce cane. We have two companies, U.S. Sugar Corporation and Florida Crystals. They probably have more than 2/3 of the acreage. And then there's a grower cooperative that is made up of a group of growers. They're not officially, they say there are, I think, 43 growers, but they're mostly live growers. So basically, work with the three main entities within the sugarcane industry. And the Everglades agricultural area is the area in pink that you can see in the map, just kind of strapping the south part of Lake Okeechobee. And for the sugarcane crop, right now, the total acreage is about 400,000 acres of land. And most of it is grown on what are called MAC soils or organic soils. So when I started in 2010, the MAC acreage used to be about 80%, and that's kind of gone down. The mineral soils, or what are called sandy soils, the acreage has really picked up. Some of the MAC soils have become shallow, so cultivating cane in, let's say, less than 6 inches of soil is not very fun or easy. So there's been expansion more into the mineral soils or sandy soils. Some of these used to be like citrus groves that people have stopped growing citrus because of the weeding disease. So again, it's kind of expanding into some of the more sandland or mineral type of soils. And the way the organic soils are classified, so the Florida Sugarcane League, they base classification of mark soils on any soil that are over 30% organic matter. But with the mark soils, you can go even up to more than 80% of organic matter. And then the mineral soils, according to the classification, it's something that is less than 20% of that organic matter. But there are so many areas. I mean, if you have 10 or 5% organic matter in some places, that is pretty high. But our mark soils, the percent organic matter still very high. So very quickly about the sugarcane crop, someone who doesn't know, people don't know much about it. It's a perennial crop that is harvested annually. And in Florida, we plant sugarcane from May to August and typically ends by end of December, but sometimes it can go until early January. So the first crop that you plant is called the plant cane. And then after you harvest that, then the successive plants, crops will be called either the ratoon or the start crops. So the harvest season begins from October, ends in between March and May, depending on the year. So like for this year, I know the Florida crystals will be done with their harvesting sometime end of March. The cooperative sometime in April, and then US Sugar typically goes until May. So there are typically maybe 3 or 4 crops that you can get from a single planting. So the first year's crop, which is plant cane, usually takes about 13 to 18 months, and that based on the acreage now, that's about 30% of the acreage. And then the first ratoon, which is whatever regrows after the first harvest, that's about 30%. Second ratoon is about 27%. And then the third ratoon or older, they rarely do they go about the fourth ratoon is about 13%. So as I mentioned, cane will be replanted every 3 to 5 years. So when planting is done, planting can be done in 2 ways. The fields can be followed before you plant your cane. And when the fields are followed, that's when rotational crops that are grown in the EAA, like rice or vegetables, come in. So the fallow fields constitute about 67%, but they can also do what is called successive planting, where right after harvesting, they go back and lease the field, get it ready, and then plant right away. So that is almost a third of the planting is done successively without having that break of the fallow field. So my research and extension program has been a very applied one, with a major goal of basically trying to solve current or potential weed management problems that arise from all the major crops that are growing in the area. So I basically work with all the crops. Although sugarcane is a major crop, that's about 400,000 acres. I do work on rice too, which is a rotational crop with sugarcane. Though our acreage is very low. I mean, it's 25,000 acres only, and compare to places like Arkansas, where maybe it's a million acres. But there are benefits to using rice as a crop in our system. Comes to things like helping with soil sustenance. Flooding fields helps kill wireworms, which is the major insect pest that attacks sugarcane. So sugarcane in Florida, when they plant, they put down an insecticide for wireworms. That's the only time that they use insecticide. But when you flood, if you plant rice, plant the field, then that helps kill the wireworms. And then sweet corn is another rotational crop, which is about 30,000 acres, and then we have a lot of leafy vegetables. So most of the vegetables like sweet corn and leafy vegetables, a lot of the growers who grow those crops don't own the land. They mostly lease the land from the sugarcane growers during that part of period. So I wanted to show this to show you why, the major weed that I've been working on the sugarcane crop. So in Florida, sugarcane still, we do a lot of, there's still burning. And when you burn, you end up with no straw. And that usually results in having a lot of annual grasses and, mostly small seeded weeds. one of the major weeds that is a problem in our system that I worked on most of my career in sugarcane is fall panicum. So it's a small seeded grass, thrives very well in this kind of system where you burn the cane, you end up with not much trash on the ground. The seed is small, so they're able to thrive and survive in the tropical environment where we grow sugar. And as you can see, I mean, it's a weed that can grow very tall. I'm a tall guy, but for panicum can be very competitive cane. But over the last few years, some of our growers have been moving into harvesting green, which does not involve any burning, where you end up with straw on the surface. And in places like Brazil, other countries where they harvest green, they've seen a shift in the kind of weed pressure or population that comes. And mostly with green harvested cane, you end up mostly with large seeded, mostly broadleaf weeds. Because when you have a trash blanket on the soil, if the seed is more like fall panicum, there's no way it's loud enough resources to be able grow and go through that trash. So as our growers kind of move into more green cane harvesting, then we're gonna see a shift in the kind of weeds that we are there. So that probably gonna shift the kind of research work that I'm doing. It's still not like, I mean, they are moving towards that direction. So in the next couple, maybe a decade or so, most of the harvesting probably will be green. So I put this diagram here just to give you like a final overview of the sugarcane, how sugarcane is grown in Florida. So I said the planting starts from August, but end up until January, and then the harvesting is from mid-October probably until May. And if you look at the sugarcane growth, when you plant, after planting, you have the germination and re-establishment. If it's a crop that is harvested for pruning, it grows, and then it tillers. So most of the weed control is done between either planting or harvesting until tillering just before the canopy closes. And then the ground growth period is mostly in the summer months when you have a lot of heat, moisture, and all that, so sugar can just grow. So with regard to weed control, there is not that much unless there are some vines that might be on the crop. That's where the weed control comes in. And then, of course, when you start harvesting for the ratoon cane, then the weed control problems come in. So for weed management, majority of my programs have been looking at, since I do most of my work is very applied, I've mostly been looking at herbicide efficacy and, of course, sugarcane tolerance. So that's has been the core component of what I've done, sugarcane. I've done some weed crop interference studies, mostly looking at the effects of fall panicum on sugarcane in terms of critical timing of removal and its density effects. Some soil herbicide interactions, looking at the dissipation or persistence of mostly soil applied herbicides, particularly on the organic soils that are very high organic matter content. We tend to find a lot of soil applied herbicides. And then I did some work with entomologist, Dr. Ron Cherry, looking at some insect pests that use weeds as alternate hosts. And then we had a pathologist who was looking at the sugarcane yellow leaf virus and some of the grass weeds as potential, hosts for that. So that in general is what my research program has mostly been in sugarcane. It's, as I mentioned, it's very applied. So sugarcane is a grass crop, and typically they rotate it with sweet corn. Or the rotation can be, sugarcane and rice. So sometimes if you harvest sugarcane, then they lease it out to the sweet corn growers right now. By the time they're done, most of the harvesting is done by May. And rice is planted from February until around maybe latest May. So you can start with cane, and then sweet corn, and then after that you harvest, and then you plant rice, and then back into sugarcane. And what that does is that because of that cycle of just grass crops, so grass weeds become the major problem in all these food crops. And the major grass weed has always been fall panicum, whether I'm working on sugarcane or whether I'm working on sweet corn or whether I'm working on the rice. So for the rice research program, another diagram here just to show you, the rice growth stages. You plant, get your seedling emergence, then it tillers, it heads, and then it matures before you harvest it. So most of the weed control is from planting all the way until, somehow when rice tillers before it also completely closes most of the row. And in other rice producing areas, they do use pre-emergence control or programs to manage weeds or do research work on that. In Florida, the way our system, the production system is, rice is usually planted when it's very dry, and because rice is a rotational crop that is planted around cane, sometimes it's very hard to move water to flood the fields after applying pre-emergence herbicides that might require incorporation. So majority of the weed control is done after post-emergence, after rice seedling emergence. And just like with the sugarcane, most of the work that I've done on rice have been just looking at herbicide efficacy, the crop tolerance. I've done some studies looking at the effect of flooding on weed control, particularly for organically grown rice. So one of our growers, which is Flora Crystal, which is a major grower, they grow organic rice. And their flooding is the only way that they can manage some of the weeds. But there's a weed species here that I put just to show you. This is called post foxfire. It's a kind of flower, can grow very tall. This was an organic field that was infested by the weeds. So you see how weed pressure in an organic system can be a completely different picture from conventionally grown rice. And in rice too, I've done some weed crop interference, mostly looking at the weed density effects of fall panicum on rice in our production system. That's some work that had not been done. And then because a lot of grass weeds are very prevalent in rice, there's an insect, the one that I'm showing there, it's called the rice stink bug. It's one of the major pests of rice, and that's what the growers spend. Rice growers spend a ton of money spraying that. But usually, if you have cane fields around, don't do a good job controlling your grasses, then they become ultimate hosts for the rice stink bug. So they'll just populate your sugarcane field by the time your rice comes back. And at that heading stage, when they become susceptible to stink bugs, then they easily just fly into rice. So did some work with Ron Cherry looking at the interaction of some of the weeds species that are found in cane with the rice stink bug, which is a major insect pest in rice. Okay. And then for the vegetable research program, as I mentioned, worked on sweet corn. Most of it has been also just very applied, looking at herbicide efficacy and crop tolerance, weed crop interference. Mostly I've done what I call critical period of weed control studies on lettuce, on green bean and sweet corn, in addition to the herbicide efficacy trials. So for lettuce, majority of lettuce in the EAA is mostly iceberg and romaine. But you can get, there's still a few acreages of mostly escarole and endive. And baby lettuce, there are growers who grow parsley, cilantro. So there are different combinations or different types of leafy vegetables that are there. So being an extension specialist, so the expectation I have to work. I mean, I get questions from, it doesn't matter what kind of crop is grown in the area. I always have to have answers at my fingertips on how to help our growers. And right now, within the EAA, there's a pickup. I mean, there's an uptick on production of cabbage. Some of the people who grow cabbage, some of them are sweet corn growers. When sweet corn is grown earlier in the year, because of there could be freezing and all that, some of the some of those growers are usually better off maybe growing cabbage, which is very tolerant to freeze. So with that, you don't kind of lose money. And then, you know, a crop like sweet corn, like right now, the volume of production is pretty high. So I was with a grower, I think that was last week. So right now it's even, because the prices are low, it's very expensive to even harvest the sweet corn. So what they do most of the time is just to pisk it in. So that's how the dynamics of some of these crops can be tough when you are growing them. So, but for me, you know, the major thing, and a lot of these vegetables, especially on organic soil, there are not very many herbicides that are registered or labeled for their use. So that's why I try and do a lot of efficacy and crop tolerance studies with the hope of, you know, getting products that our growers can use. Right now, I've got a graduate student working on trying to use very reduced rates of pendimethalin-free margins for lettuce, mostly to target common parsley that is coming the most problematic weed species to control in lettuce, but particularly for lettuce that is grown early in the season when it's still super warm. Because common parsley thrives when under very hot and very hot conditions that are associated with early planted lettuce. That would be sometime in September into the October months. Yeah. So, as I mentioned, my extension program is like 65% of my work. So most of my appointment is extension. And what I've done is mostly to do very comprehensive research-driven, very farmer-focused research. Majority of my success in extension, I would say, I can attribute to a very close working relationship with the growers in a region. Especially the sugarcane growers and even vegetable growers. So the goal of the program that I've been doing is to integrate some of the modern, you know, wind management strategies that are very practical with field-based applications. So one big difference with a lot of crops and with what you see in the Belgrade area, sugarcane group, the two major companies have their research divisions. So an example, some company like Flora Crystal has like 9 PhDs. I was talking with Jay. They have more PhDs than PhDs we have at our center. So that has made, you know, doing collaborative, and they are very good at working with faculty to conduct research, or sometimes to even conduct research that you can publish. So they know you. Within the university system, you have to be able to publish your work to make it relevant. And then, unlike other crops, I only work with 3 extension agents. So sugarcane only has two agents. Matt Van Milden, he covers Palm Beach County, and then Christian covers Henry County. So even though the crop is, you know, almost 400,000 acres, but it's mostly, majority of it is in Palm Beach County and Henry County. There's a little in Martin County. So the only 2 extension agents that we work with. And then for the rotational crops that are grown on mark, there is 1 vegetable agent from Palm Beach County that I work with. And they've been very instrumental, you know, working with them. So both the Palm Beach County, the sugarcane guy, Matthew, he covers sugarcane and rice. And then Anna, they are based at our center. So that makes it very easy to do stuff together with them, you know, organizing workshops, meetings, whether it's organizing field experiments. So that's been critical in making my extension program to be very effective and to show that impact that was important in, you know, especially the promotion, going through that promotion process to show an impactful program. So these 2, you know, 3 people have been very instrumental in helping with that. Most of the extension thing that I do, I do very research-based weed recommendation. As I mentioned, I do mostly apply the research work, and they are typically herbicide efficacy trial. There's something that we call, I don't know, other people who do extension work, drive-through field day. So the major difference is if you have a field day, instead of saying that, okay, it's from 10 to noon where everybody shows up. So what we've done working with, especially with sugarcane, with three major entities, is to have what is called a drive-through where each company have their allotted time, they come with their people. So that way they spend more time in the field, they're able to pay much more attention than when you have a large group of people showing up for a field day. So that's been a very effective way of communicating some of the research that we do, particularly for the sugarcane group. And I forgot to mention, like for the vegetable side, like lettuce, we only do it with like, it's only 5 growers, so not that many. Sweet corn also is not a very large number of growers, probably, I don't think it's more than 15. So that makes that one-on-one contact to be very easy, and makes it very easy to quantify some of the impacts of the kind of research that we do, or the kind of extension programs that we have. And a lot of my programs are very holistic programs, integrated weed management, whether it's using both chemicals or combining them with mechanical weed control and so forth. And then, of course, stakeholder engagement and training has been very important. As I mentioned, 3 extension agents that I work with have been very instrumental in that, organizing field days and on-farm demonstrations, things like workshops, and also collaborations with growers. So we do a lot of work with our growers in their fields. So that picture there is, we have a program that is called a spray rodeo. And basically what a spray rodeo is, we invite growers to come in. Mostly commercial applicators, and some of the growers, they bring in their live spray rigs. And we do a calibration exercise, usually in January, when most of them, when most of the pesticide, especially the herbicide application, is still very low. So we go through the calibration, look at all their spraying nozzles and so forth. And that has been a very successful program, because it enables them to be prepared for the season, where they go in with their spraying equipment that are kind of calibrated to do the job. But that's been a work that I've done successfully with our extension agents. So my extension program is typical and outreach, using outreach and communication. So we have extension publications, IPs, ED's publication. There are these fact sheets on weed ID that we give out when we have field days, because weed management guides, and we try and do some webinars that target mostly sugarcane growers, vegetable growers, and also mostly the sugarcane and vegetable growers. So one key thing that was critical in trying to highlight some of the things that I was able to show in my extension program, it's always critical to do, of course, monitoring and evaluating your program impact, collecting the stakeholder feedback through surveys and meetings and so forth. I track weed shifts, the potential economic impact. And of course, continuously refining recommendations has been something that I've done over the years for the crops that I work on. And one thing that has helped me to be successful, of course, my program has not been very big with students, but the students that I've had have been very critical in helping with conducting some of the research trials that I have. Those who were here long enough, this was Jose Fernandez, was very instrumental in my program. He was worked with me for his master's and PhD, and was a very good student that was very impactful. So I know their programs here that are larger than mine, but graduate student education is always very important. So before I finish, I want to just highlight some points that I think are very critical when you're looking at pathway to being a food professor. Some of the things that you can do to be successful. So the goal, I would say, is you should build a very strong research and extension portfolio. And for me, someone like me who does extension, so if you're doing research and teaching, having a strong research and teaching portfolio. Of course, publishing, I do applied work. Most of my weed science work, within the weed science discipline, we have three major journals: weed science, weed technology, there's one for each basic plants, but so majority of my work is either in wheat technology or wheat science, which are the major publications in wheat science. Of course, securing grants and funding. I've been able to get some grants and then also funding from our grower groups, particularly the sugarcane group and our rice growers. And then, of course, the level where, it's good to develop that independent research identity where people will know, what you're doing based on some of the impacts that you have. So, right, for me, working on cane, when people have anything to do with green management, sugarcane, and some of the vegetables, so I've been able to create that identity where become a reliable source of information, not just for growers, but also for other researchers. And then, of course, collaboration. So most of my collaboration has been with faculty, mostly at the center, because we have different disciplines. We're working on the same crop. So that has helped a lot. Nationally, sugarcane is also grown in Louisiana, but their production system is kind of very different from ours. So that collaboration has not been done very minimal, but I've done some work with LSU that was looking at some bioenergy crops. But a little bit of international collaboration, not as much, but I think those are very critical when you're looking at being successful at getting promoted to a full professor. And then, of course, if you're in extension, you want to have a very strong stakeholder engagement and training programs, and then making sure that, for your research and extension, everything you do has to be impactful, because otherwise, if you don't see any impact, then that really doesn't help that much in having a successful program. Because for students, being an excellent mentor, student, whether it's students or postdocs, my career, I've only had one postdoc, so that program has not been that big. And then, of course, leadership and service, whether it's in committees, professional organizations, and so forth, organizing conferences or workshops, being a program chair. So for me, my involvement in a professional career, I've mostly been much stronger within the sugarcane society, whether it's the American Society of Sugarcane Technologies or the International Society of Sugarcane Technology. So I've been very involved with that. And then the normal, of course, being an editor or associate editor or reviewer of academic journals. So those I think are some of the key things that would be critical in helping someone get into that promotion from associate to full professor. And then, of course, establishing, national and international recognition, applying for awards or fellowships. The fellowship that I got from the Carnegie Foundation of New York, I think that was before COVID, and then I couldn't do that, go for the fellowship. So I went to Kenya, went to a university, to help them with developing their curriculum for a graduate program. It was for crop protection. So wheat science was going to be one of them. So this was in 2023. So I was at the University called Kibabi. And while I was there in that area, they grow a lot of sugarcane. So I was able to visit one of the mills. This was a grower failed with the two guys with the dashboards. Those were the two extension agents for the mill. So the extension program in Kenya works very differently. It's run by the local government, but it's not a very effective system. The universities are not involved at all in extension, even though they do research work. So that's something that hopefully maybe will change in the future. Of course, global corporations, and then in ensuring that your practices or research work that you do would influence the industry practices or activities that they do. So that's the only way that you'll be able to show that your research is very, very impactful. So people like me who do very applied research work, the level of adoption of whatever research work that I do is very critical to really show if whatever I'm doing is worth it. And I know the challenges in doing a lot of, this kind of work, whether it's for promotion and so forth. Because for me, having an applied program, sometimes securing some of those very large federal grants with an applied program can be very hard. And then, of course, I have multiple crops that I work on, so sometimes can be very challenging to work on working on multiple projects, completely different crops, and kind of staying focused. So that's something that can really affect the way a faculty member can work. But one thing that I did, of course, was to getting into interdisciplinary grants usually helps. I was able to be involved in a DOE grant with Texas A&M on some bioenergy crop. I was the main PI for UF, so things like those. Because if I was on my own with the weed science type of work, the applied work I do, I don't think that would have been successful. And of course, delegating tasks, I have a lot of crops to deal with. So the people who work under me are always, delegating tasks can be very critical. I put this here, when people come from assistant to associate professor, there's always a mentoring committee. Is it necessary for the next level of promotion? Because a mentoring committee will provide you with a structured guidance, advocacy and accountability. And I think that when you don't have that, sometimes promotion can be more challenging or slower or less strategic. Because the first promotion, you have to do it within a given time span, but the next level of promotion, there's not too much pressure. So if you're not very strategic, I don't know, if you are a mentoring committee, maybe that might help. So what I would say that if an official committee is unavailable, I think one of the best things to do is to just actively build a network with some of the senior faculty, full professors who are there, and kind of seek more institutional support to be successful. So this is something that I think that was one of the major challenges. When I went up for my full promotion, Jay and Brent and Ron were very instrumental in helping. But without that, then you're kind of on your own. You have to figure it. So you have to be someone has to be very strategic to be able to get to that next level. So what's going to be next for me? I think I'll continue working on what I'm doing. My goal is to have hopefully more international collaborations to kind of show, give myself more name recognition. Within the sugarcane crop, yeah, there are not very many weed scientists out there, but I think I still need to do more to have that more of a global impact in terms of what I do for my research and extension work. And with that, I want to acknowledge some of the collaborators that I've had, some of the funding sources that have made my program to be successful over the years. With that, I hope I still have time for questions. Yep. Any questions? I hope you learned something about my program.
Calvin, if I can ask one, so you're in a situation where there are very few growers all working large acres. So any change that you make for them, even small changes, can be a $500,000 decision for them.
Correct.
How have you worked to gain trust with them so that they're willing to listen to you and leverage a $500,000?
So for the sugarcane industry, I've done a lot of work together with them, whether it's research trials for, let's say, any new herbicides that we test. Majority of the time, testing in their farms and also at our center. So that has created that level of trust. For the vegetable growers, let me say, like a crop like sweet corn. We, at the center, we don't work directly a lot with the growers. We work with a crop consulting group. So they are the ones that they use for, if they have issues with their recommendations, if testing anything new, I have a field day, the crop consultants who come, because most of the vegetable growers rely on them 100%. Yes, great.
Thank you for a nice presentation, Calvin, and for coming all the way to Gainesville. So that was a long trip, and I appreciate that. So I had a question when it comes to napier grass. It's also used as bioenergy feedstock. But in South Florida, there are some ecotypes that use a lot of wind dispersed seeds and are basically invasive. So my question was, since you didn't mention napier grass, is it really a problem in sugarcane? Or it's kind of hyped up a little bit?
Napier grass, you will find it here and there, but it's not like a major problem. It's very localized. You can find spotty patches in fields, but it's not like something that you see all over the place.
So it's not like a panicum or something?
No, it's not the
Not
same.
by far, right?
No.
And do these people who put this into the invasive list, do they interact with you and get your inputs into that? Or they just do this by looking at literature and making the decision? That's what I'm wondering.
So people on Zoom, I don't know if you are hearing what Freddy's saying, but do people who put plants such as napier grass, elephant grass, be invasive, interact with me? No, I've never been in contact with anyone. They probably look at what is in the literature.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Yes.
So for the weed control, not very nice talk, by the way. For the weed control, I would say like, for me, I have a yard to control the weeds. It's mainly like manually or physically to remove the weeds, or sometimes I saw my husband to apply the herbicide.
That's good.
My question here is, you have some like a modern weed control management strategy. Can you talk a little bit more? What is like the current frontier of the weed management strategy? Give me some education. I don't know.
Okay. So for those on Zoom, question is, what are some of the current modern frontiers for weed technology?
Effectively, yeah, control weeds.
I mean, weed management is evolving. I mean, people are using, either drones for weed ID and things like that. But for the area where I work, weed management is still very conventional. So like sugarcane, it's still heavy reliance on herbicides and just applying it conventionally. Earlier in the year, we had a sweet corn field day, and John Deere have a sprayer that has cameras that can identify the weed and spray and skip and all that. And so they contacted us to with our vegetable extension engine, because they wanted to show that growth. But it was not like we were going to have just a full field with sweet corn. So what we did was we put down a pre-margins, and the goal was to use it just for escapes. So our system, a lot of these technologies are going to be, I think eventually we will get there, but our system, we are still stuck. I mean, it's still economical to just go with the conventional way of applying herbicides and controlling weeds the way it's been done before. There's a company called Carbon Robotics. They use laser technology to kill weeds. I don't want to give growers bad name, but I've seen it go through a field, and the field was just as weed. Yes.
I heard there was a way you cover the field with a plastic, and then under the sun, at a certain time, the temperature goes up. It will kill the seeds of the weeds.
Yes.
Is that applicable?
It's applicable for maybe crops that are grown under plastic, something like tomatoes or so, but for sugarcane or the vegetables, where we don't grow anything out of plastic here, it's not gonna be practical for,
And during the fallow
uh, it,
season, you can.
it'll be impossible to cover, because most of the sugarcane fields are like 35 acres, the way the canals are made. So that's something that almost impossible. During the fallow period, something that I didn't mention here, even though we grow rice, but growers sometimes just flood the field with no crop on it. But one of the major reasons for doing that is to reduce soil subsidence. So those who've been to Belgrade, we have a subsidence post that shows how much muck soil has been lost. Muck soil is organic, so the minute the water is pulled out, it oxidizes and just breaks down. So one way of reducing subsidence is to flood, and flooding somehow helps with some level of weed control. That's something that I've never done, to look at the effect of flooding on weeds. That's, I would say, some of the pet things that I want to do down my career. So that way, when the grower asks me, okay, how much is flooding helping me controlling these weeds, then hopefully allow an answer to that. Yes, please. Oh.
Hey, Calvin. Given subsidence and political, environmental issues around farming muck soil, how much longer will we be farming the area? What do the landowners do with these large tracts of land?
I don't know. I mean, when I started in Belgrade 15 years ago, I was like, oh, how long are these people going to do some of this farming? But as soils become shallow, most of the muck, I mean, the muck soil, there is that limestone rock layer, at the bottom. So as it becomes shallow, you start hitting that the rock. So that incorporates a little bit of some more mineral material into the soil. So it kind of slows down the amount of subsidence. But a majority of the growers, especially the sugarcane growers, are doing practices that hopefully will help sustain that production, so that they don't lose the soil completely. I think that's still probably in my lifetime they'll still be farming that. But I've seen cane grow like even at the center. We have some spots that are like 6 inches only or less. And cane can still thrive in it, even though it's tough. I mean, the issue comes when it's too dry, then dries out. If it rains, the water becomes too much. But then, depending on how you manage the crop.
Have you observed subsidence in your 15 years there?
I'm not. I can't say I've observed, but the fields have seemed to me to be about the same depth. Because there's one now that I help with part of my responsibilities as the associate center director is to work with the farm manager to help with managing the farm. And I know fields that are shallow, fields that are, that have deep muck, and the shallow fields, they've remained about the same since I started. So I think as the soil becomes shallower, with hitting that bedrock, you get more organic material that kind of helps a little bit to maintain it to a level where you can use it. Yes.
So I was wondering, in absence of a mandate, what is really driving the adoption of the green cane harvesting?
I would say when I started, not very many of the growers used to talk about the green cane harvesting, but now they've embraced it. I think there's a lot of pressure on them to do that way, but sometimes the prevailing conditions when sugarcane is harvested can also make the field to be harvested green. So when it's super dry, you don't want to burn because the muck soil will catch fire and it will burn. And when it's too wet after a heavy downpour, the leaves don't burn easily. So it's easy just to go and harvest green. So there is a pressure on them to, move to green cane harvesting, and also the prevailing conditions at the time of harvest also dictate on when the cane can be harvested. So at our center, we made a decision that all our cane now is harvested green. But we will be doing a rotation every 5 years to ban everything. Because when you don't ban, then rodents become an issue. So at our center right now, I mean, we literally have thousands of, other than rats, but rabbits that feed on anything. So when I have my cane trials, my weedy check, sometimes the rabbits will come and mow all my weeds, fall panicum, and then so there is that balance. So there's going to be a lot of, rodent issues and all that we can obviously do. But the growers have done a good thing. I mean, there are barnouts all over the place. Like Flora Crystals right now has about 2,000 barnout boxes, and they plan on increasing that to, use those barnouts to help with rodent control instead of using rodenticides. So it's easier to spray weeds, but using rodenticides is a whole different ballgame in terms of the regulations and all that.
Well, with that, Calvin, thank you very much for coming. Well, let's recognize him. I want to echo what Freddie said, and thank you for driving all the way up. It's a long way from here to Belglade. It seems to be shorter from Belglade to Gainesville to Belglade. But
it took me from West Palm Beach 3 hours, about 50 minutes.
well, we appreciate you making the drive and coming and talking to us about your program and your strategy that you've had for the last several years here. So with that, we're going to reconvene at First Magnitude, 30-45 minutes if you're available. We'll continue talking with Calvin and enjoying the time he's going to be with us. So with that, everyone, thank you all for coming out this afternoon.
Okay.